Moonlight filtered weakly through the upper canopy, slipping between thick lianas and glossy leaves. Normally, the rainforest pulsed at night. Leaves trembled under light winds rolling down from the hills. Moths drifted between blossoms. Branches swayed in soft arcs. But tonight, nothing moved. Sombra, an adult ocelot with rosetted fur and sharp yellow eyes, padded silently along a tangled path of vines and roots. His padded feet made no sound, but he wasn't listening for his own stealth, he was listening for everything else. And there was nothing. No shifting leaves. No rustling canopies. No murmur of a breeze. Even the air felt too thick, as if the night itself refused to flow. Sombra paused and lifted his nose. He could smell humidity, orchids, wet bark, and distant water, all normal scents, but the airflow carrying them was wrong. It wasn't drifting. It wasn't circulating. It just hung. From atop a low ridge, Dr. Mara Esteban, a nocturnal mammal researcher, adjusted her thermal camera. Her assistant, Luis, stood beside her. "Mara, do you notice the trees?" Luis asked. Mara squinted. "They're perfectly still. This area always has crosswinds at night." "Yes. Always." She adjusted the camera again. "But I'm reading no movement in the leaves. No heat displacement." Sombra crept beneath a curtain of vines, head low. Normally, the long tendrils swayed with every small gust. Tonight they hung like heavy ropes, unmoving even when he brushed past them. The jungle was holding its breath. Sombra didn't like it. He narrowed his eyes at the moonlit vines arching above him, still, shimmering faintly, as if frozen in their own reflections. The breeze wasn't resting. It had forgotten how to stir. Sombra slinked deeper into the understory. His whiskers should have detected minute shifts in air pressure, but nothing brushed them, no matter how far he walked. When he passed beneath a long vine-laden branch, he stopped. Something strange. The leaves trembled. Not because wind touched them. Not because Sombra brushed the vine. Not because of insects climbing. They trembled as if responding to a breeze that wasn't there. Sombra lowered his head, ears pinned back. Above him, Mara and Luis noticed something similar. "Mara! Look!" Luis pointed into the canopy. "Some vines are moving." "But there's no air current," she whispered. She lifted a finely tuned anemometer. The needle stayed flat. "Impossible. There's movement but no measurable wind." Sombra watched as one cluster of vine leaves shivered again. The movement was delayed, unnatural, as though mimicking a breeze from memory rather than reacting to one. Then the trembling stopped. The vine froze. Sombra crept closer and gently tapped the branch with a paw. Nothing. No sway. No recoil. As if inertia itself had been suspended. Luis stared at his tablet. "I'm getting pressure anomalies." "Localized?" Mara asked. "Yes. Very small. But rhythmic." Sombra felt it through the soil, the faintest pulse. A subtle, slow vibration traveling sideways through the ground. Not enough to disturb the vines. Just enough for a predator's paw to sense. He backed away. Something underneath the forest was shifting. Something that affected the air above it, or was trying to. And no creature understood why the vines tried to tremble without wind. Around midnight, the moon brightened and washed the jungle in silver. Sombra moved along a mossy fallen log, muscles soft and fluid. His tail swayed slowly, brushing ferns. But the ferns never bent. They never leaned aside. His tail passed through them like through thick fog, touching, but not disturbing. He froze. He swished his tail again, deliberately, striking a long fern frond. Nothing. The frond didn't move. It didn't react. It simply remained where it was, ignoring the force applied to it. Sombra stepped back, startled. Luis and Mara reached the same log minutes later. "Mara, feel this." Luis pressed his hand to a fern. It bent. But only after his hand had been there for 3 full seconds. Delayed response. Mara inhaled sharply. This isn't plant rigidity. This is inertia disruption. In what sense? In the sense that the forest is deciding when to react to forces. Sombra crept closer, inspecting the delayed moving fern with wide eyes. When Mara brushed a vine, it shuddered, late, with a jittery vibration. Not natural. Not alive in the biological sense. Responsive in a different way. Every physical rule the jungle followed seemed suspended. Sombra tried stepping onto a leaf-covered branch. His weight should have shifted it downward. But the branch only bowed under him after he stood on it, as if recalculating how physics worked. His pupils dilated. He hissed softly. The forest wasn't just still. It was breaking its own behavior patterns. Not chaotic. Not random. Systematic. Like something was rewriting the rules in real time. Hours passed. Mara and Luis set up wind sensors, thermal arrays, and motion detectors across a 3-meter radius. Every instrument produced irregular readings. No breeze. No convection currents. No temperature gradients. Yet vines occasionally quivered. Leaves sometimes shook. Branches lifted fractions of centimeters. All without airflow. Sombra perched high in a crook of a tree, watching. His ears twitched at a faint sound, not wind, not animals. A humming vibration. Low. Subtle. Growing. Mara heard it too. Luis. Do you hear that? Luis nodded slowly. It's rhythmic. Sombra climbed higher, claws clicking softly on bark. And then, the air moved. For the first time in hours. A gust rolled through the canopy, soft but real. Leaves fluttered. Vines swayed. Branches rustled. Natural movement. The jungle seemed to awaken. Sombra felt wind on his whiskers. He inhaled deeply, relief. But then the breeze died. Instantly. Cut off mid-gust. The vines froze mid-sway, too. Literally mid-sway. One vine hung tilted at an angle, as if time stopped only for it. Sombra stared, muscles tight. Mara gasped. Luis, look. The vine gradually lowered into its resting position. Not falling with gravity. Lowering with intentional slowness. As though something was trying to mimic wind, failed, and decided to reset. Luis swallowed. It's learning. Mara whispered, or testing. The jungle, momentarily animated, went dead still again. No breeze. No motion. No correction. Only the memory of wind lingered. Sombra realized, the breeze had tried to return. Around dawn, a faint mist crawled across the forest floor. Sombra descended from the tree, pacing nervously. His whiskers twitched again, sensing micro-movements beneath the earth. Something below the forest was active. Mara positioned several ground sensors. Luis monitored oscillation frequencies. Mara, he whispered, the soil pulses are synchronizing. Sombra felt them too. Pulse. Pause. Pulse. Pulse. Pause. Like a coded sequence. The vines trembled in sync, not from wind, but from the vibration. Then the air shifted. Not a breeze. Not truly. But a vertical displacement, a column of rising air from the soil. As if the ground exhaled. Sombra backed away, fur rising along his spine. Leaves lifted slightly, pulled upward. Vines strained toward the sky. Mara whispered, Luis. Something is generating an updraft from below. Luis stared. But nothing's hot enough to cause convection. The air thickened. Sombra crouched low. Something was coming. Not a creature. Not an animal. A force. A pressure. A presence. The vines twisted faintly, as if orienting toward a point beneath the soil. Leaves curled upward. The entire understory lifted by millimeters. Then, a single gust of wind burst upward from the ground. A sharp column of air that spiraled through the vines, rippling leaves, a perfect, artificial breeze. The first real movement of the night. Sombra braced himself. The gust vanished as quickly as it appeared. And the jungle went still. Too still. Mara exhaled shakily. Whatever's under there. It tried to make wind. Luis shivered. And almost succeeded. Sombra stared at the soil beneath the still vines. Whatever had paused the breeze. Whatever had imitated the breeze. Whatever had exhaled. It hadn't gone. It was waiting. And learning. Dawn should have softened the night's tension, but instead the first rays of sunlight seemed to sharpen it. The jungle floor glimmered with dew yet remained eerily still, as if afraid to disturb whatever had stirred below during the night. Sombra moved silently through a maze of twisted vines, each one hanging heavy in the humid air. Normally, the sunrise brought wind currents that moved down valley, rustling the canopy and setting the understory swaying in 1,000 directions. But today, the sunlight felt trapped. It warmed the vines unevenly, pockets of heat forming like isolated islands, while shadows cooled instantly, far too fast for normal thermal dynamics. Sombra stopped beneath a cluster of broad-leaf vines. He listened. A soft sound, faint, rhythmic, pulsed through the leaves. Not rustling. Not insects. Not wind. A vibration. He looked up, pupils dilating, muscles tightening. The vines were listening. They angled subtly toward the ground, toward the soil pulses that had grown clearer with daylight. Sombra rose on his hind legs, placing a paw gently against one vine. He felt the vibration directly. Short. Short. Long. Pause. Long. Short. A sequence. Sombra pulled his paw back, ears flattening. Above him, Mara and Luis were analyzing new seismic readings. Mara. Luis lowered the tablet slowly, comma the pattern is repeating. What pattern? Yesterday's pulses. But stronger. Mara stepped toward a thick vine, running her fingers along its length. Feel this, she whispered. Luis placed his hand against the plant. His breath caught. It's responding, he whispered. The vine is orienting to the vibrations, Mara said. Not randomly. It's focusing on them. Like a receiver. Sombra stepped back. His instinct screamed that the jungle was no longer just a place, it was becoming an interface. A network. The vines trembled again, more deliberately this time. Like muscles responding to a call. A rustle spread across the canopy. Not from wind, but from signal. Leaves shifted uniformly. Branches creaked in slow, synchronized arcs. The entire vine structure rotated a fraction of a degree. Mara stepped backward. Luis. The vines are aligning. To what? Mara swallowed. To the source beneath the soil. Sombra watched, whiskers trembling. The jungle around him felt charged, not with electricity, but with intention. The vines weren't reacting. They were preparing. And whatever lay underground had gained their attention. The next night came heavy and dense, with the moon rising bright and sharp. Visibility was good, almost unnervingly good, the light falling in perfect straight angles without scattering. Sombra felt uncomfortable in moonlight like this. It was too clean, too precise. Shadows didn't waver or change shape. Even his own looked cut from black stone. Mara and Luis sat beside a set of instruments arranged around the area where the breeze had erupted the night before. A microphone array, a laser anemometer, soil sensors, and a directional thermal camera all aimed inward. Everything waited. And the jungle waited with them. Sombra perched atop a slanted trunk, scanning the vines overhead. They were tense, taut like bowstrings, angled toward the center of the clearing. Luis checked the readings. Mara. Atmospheric pressure is dipping again. How fast? Too fast. Sombra detected it too, a descending heaviness in the air, pressing against his lungs. He gasped once, quietly, then steadied himself. The vines trembled. The leaves twitched. The jungle leaned inward all at once. And then, a whisper. Not sound. Movement. Air slid across the ground in a thin line, like the first breath of a sleeping giant. Sombra stood still as a statue. The whisper became a ripple. The ripple became a pulse. It passed through the clearing, bending blades of grass, lifting loose dust, shaking vines. But every motion lagged by a fraction of a second, delayed, artificial, as if something was puppeteering the breeze incorrectly and correcting as it went. Luis froze. Mara. The wind has a pattern. Mara listened intently. Then her eyes widened. It's matching the soil pulses. Short. Short. Long. Pause. Long. Short. The breeze repeated it. Sombra blinked, stunned. The breeze wasn't just returning, it was communicating. Or trying to. The vines swayed in perfect rhythm, the delay narrowing with each cycle. The air moved more fluidly each time. The jungle was learning. Sombra turned his eyes toward the ground. Beneath the soil, the faint vibrations grew stronger, clearer. Something below was using the breeze to speak upward. The ocelot crouched low, fur prickling. Then, a sudden updraft burst through the clearing, spiraling like a small vortex of cool night air. It climbed through the vines, tugging lightly at Sombra's whiskers, lifting Mara's hair. It felt like a question. A probe. A request. The vines responded instantly. They rotated inward, converging slightly, like giant antennae focusing. Mara stumbled back. Luis. The plants are synchronizing with it. The vortex pulsed once more. Then collapsed. Air went still. Vines froze. The night fell into unnatural, suffocating silence. Sombra exhaled shakily. Luis stared at the instruments. The pattern stopped. Mara's voice trembled. No. It finished. Sombra knew it too. The jungle had received something. Something from beneath. Something intentional. And now, the vines were waiting for an answer. The next day dawned with a strange haze that clung low to the forest floor, as though the air could not rise. Sunlight filtered through the canopy in unnaturally straight beams, failing to scatter or disperse. Every ray looked like a rigid column, a frozen shaft of gold. Sombra slunk through the vines, body fluid but muscles tense. He felt the pressure in his whiskers long before any human instrument detected it, that faint tug from below, a steady pulse that vibrated through the roots, soil, and stones. As he moved, he noticed something new. The trees were leaning. Not visibly, no dramatic angle, but subtly. Branches extended just slightly toward the clearing where last night's pulse had spoken. Leaves angled unnaturally, as though trying to listen with their surfaces. Sombra climbed onto a fallen tree trunk and scanned the area with wide pupils. Plants weren't supposed to orient this fast. Or this precisely. Above him, Mara and Luis approached with a ground-penetrating radar unit. Mara, Luis said quietly, the subsurface shifts are back. Depth? Within the top meter. Something's moving between root layers. Mara frowned. Roots don't do that. Not roots, Luis murmured. Something between them. Sombra heard the pulse again. Short, long, long, pause, short. It grew slightly sharper, as though the soil itself had become a speaker. Mara knelt, brushing aside the leaf litter. Feel this. Luis crouched beside her, laying his fingertips against the earth. The vibration was faint but unmistakable, the same pattern the breeze repeated earlier. But now something else accompanied it. A deeper, slower thrum beneath the discrete pulses. A second message. A foundation. Sombra stepped closer, whiskers trembling. The forest canopy shifted. Vines overhead angled inward as though focusing. Leaves rotated microscopically. Even moss patches seemed to bend their tiny filaments toward the clearing. Luis wiped sweat from his brow. Mara. Everything in the forest is aligning. To what? Sombra already knew. To below. The soil pulsed again, more strongly, and every vine in the vicinity shivered, as though responding to an unheard command. Mara took a shaky breath. It's coordinating the plants. Sombra's tail twitched involuntarily. Not controlling. Not puppeteering. Coordinating. The difference sent a chill through him. The jungle wasn't resisting the pulse. It was helping it. Night swept across the jungle like ink pouring over a page, thick, dark, heavy. The moon rose bright and clean, casting silver across the vines. The air remained perfectly still. Too still. Sombra perched high in a tree, body coiled. His golden eyes scanned the clearing where everything last shook. Mara and Luis were already there, assembling an array of microphones and lightweight fabric strips to visualize wind direction. They set everything up. Then they waited. Minutes passed. Hours. Silence. No breeze. No insects. Only the faint soil pulse beneath their feet. Sombra felt it growing. Stronger. Clearer. More deliberate. And then, the air moved. Not gradually. Not gently. Suddenly. A thin ribbon of wind spiraled upward from a crack in the soil, the same crack where vines had oriented earlier. The wind twisted, unnatural and too precise. The fabric strips snatched upward in perfect symmetry. Sombra lowered his body against the branch, claws tight. Mara whispered, "Luis. It's forming a column again." Luis stared in awe. Like a breath. But engineered. The column thickened. Leaves lifted. Vines quivered. Dust spiraled around the clearing in an elegant, perfectly controlled vortex. Then, the wind pulsed. Short. Long. Long. Pause. Short. It was the soil's message. Now carried by the air. Sombra's fur lifted along his spine. The breeze pulsed again, louder this time. The fabric strips vibrated in perfect synchrony. Even Sombra's whiskers trembled at the exact rhythm. Luis swallowed. "Mara. It's speaking." Mara, breathless, "I know." Sombra stared down as the vortex narrowed, concentrating. Something at its center glowed faintly, not light, not heat, but motion compressed into a single point. The pulse frequency suddenly changed. Short. 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 Long. Long. Short. Mara froze. It's a new pattern. Luis's hands shook over the tablet. It switched to a response format. "Meaning what?" Mara whispered. Luis looked at her, face pale. "It's waiting for us to reply." The wind column froze mid-turn, utterly motionless, defying physics, suspended like a sculpture of air. Silence pressed in from every direction. The vines held still. The leaves waited. Even the insects dared not chirp. Sombra crouched low, wide-eyed. The jungle was listening. Not for the breeze. For an answer.